Have you ever wondered what happens when we die? I never thought about it until the day my heart stopped. My name is Sophia. I am an ordinary woman, an immigrant who came to this country in search of better opportunities. My routine was like that of millions of others, getting up early, taking crowded public transportation, working all day, and returning home exhausted. That Wednesday, I left the office later than usual. It was raining, and the dark sky seemed like an omen of what was to come. I remember looking at the clock, 7:42 p.m. This number was etched in my mind as it would be the last minutes of my life as I knew it. I was crossing the street when it all happened. The headlights, the deafening sound of the horn, and then silence. I felt a violent impact. My body was thrown through the air as if it weighed nothing. They say that in those moments, your life flashes before your eyes like a movie. But for me, it wasn't like that. There was just a sensation of time frozen, and then darkness. What happened afterward, it's hard to explain to those who've never experienced it. I could see my body lying on the asphalt, the people crowded around, someone screaming for an ambulance. Strange. I wasn't there, but I was also somewhere else, as if I were floating, watching everything from above. I tried to scream to say I was okay, but no one was listening. It was at that moment that I felt it. A feeling of detachment, as if an invisible thread connecting me to my body was breaking. And then the panic hit. I wasn't ready to leave. There were so many things unfinished, so many words unsaid. My children, my husband, my parents who didn't even know I loved them so much. How could I leave like that? But something was pulling at me, a force I couldn't resist. I looked at my body once more, watching the paramedics come, trying to revive me. Please don't let me go, I thought. But the current was too strong. The sensation of leaving my body was like floating in an ocean, being pulled by the current, unable to fight it. I saw the frantic movement of the doctors trying to revive me. I heard the sound of the defibrillator and the words were losing echoed as if from afar. I began to back away from the scene. It wasn't like in the movies. There was no welcoming tunnel of light calling me. Instead, I realized I was being pulled down as if an invisible anchor was tied to my soul. The feeling was one of growing despair, as if every inch I moved away from my body made it impossible to return. It was then that I realized I wasn't alone in that state. I had presences. I can't describe them precisely, but I can say they emanated a sense of malevolence. Shadows that seemed to have a consciousness of their own moved around me, whispering words I couldn't understand but that caused a terror I'd never experienced before. The environment began to change. What had once been only darkness now seemed to take on shapes and contours. I began to feel heat, a stifling heat that didn't burn my skin but penetrated to the very depths of my existence, and the sounds. The sounds were the worst. Laments, muffled screams as if they came from far away and at the same time were inside my own mind. "It's not your time yet," whispered a voice, different from the others. "But you have to see it, you have to understand it in order to tell it." It wasn't a comforting voice, but it didn't convey the same hostility as the shadows either. It was as if that entity had a purpose for me. The air, if I may call it that, what I breathed in that state became heavier and heavier. An acrid smell like sulfur and putrefaction invaded my senses. In the distance, I began to glimpse something like a portal, an opening in the middle of that dark dimension from which a reddish, pulsating light emanated. The shadows now seemed more agitated, more anxious. Some tried to touch me and each stroke was like a nice needle penetrating my soul. I tried to scream, but I had no voice. I tried to run, but I had nowhere to go. And then, without warning, I was sucked into that portal with a force that was impossible to resist. As they dragged me, I caught a glimpse of my body in the hospital. The doctors kept trying tirelessly. "He'll come back," someone said. But in that moment, I knew I was going to a place from which few return, and worst of all, I understood, in some inexplicable way, that I was being taken to see something that would change not only my life but could change the lives of many others. Going through that portal was like being swallowed by an endless abyss. The sensation of falling was endless, while all around me, flashes of disturbing scenes appeared and disappeared, flashes of people I knew, moments from my life, decisions I made. Everything passed before me as if I were being judged by an invisible force. The terror I felt is indescribable. It's not physical fear that we feel when we are in danger. It is a spiritual fear. The absolute horror of a soul realizing it is moving away from the presence of God. Every second of that fall seemed like an eternity, and with each moment, I felt more clearly that I was entering a realm of torment. The screams were real and constant. They were not just sounds, but carried emotions, despair, belated repentance, futile pleas, souls crying out for mercy when the time of mercy had passed for them. Their voices formed a symphony, they existed within you. And the smell, a smell of sulfur mixed with something indescribable, like materialized corruption itself. It was then that I first saw them, horrendous figures that can only be described as demons, deformed creatures, some almost humanoid, others completely alien in appearance. Their eyes burned with hatred and malice. They seemed to delight in the suffering around them, moving among the tormented souls with a dark purpose. The most disturbing thing it was seeing them dragging people, or rather, souls in chains. The chains were not physical, but seemed to have been forged from the very sins of those people. And many of these souls were in pairs bound by shared suffering and damnation. One of the creatures noticed my presence and turned toward me. His smile revealed rows of sharp, rotten teeth. "You came too soon," he said in a voice that seemed to rend the air. "But since you are here, let me show you what awaits those who desecrate the sacred." I was pulled by an invisible force deeper into that abyss. I tried to close my eyes, but in that state, there was no escaping the vision. I was about to witness something that would forever change my understanding of marriages, relationships, and the sacred value we should place on them. If you feel a weight on your heart while listening to this testimony, it is no coincidence. I believe that God allows some souls to return to serve as a warning to those who still have time. If this account is touching your spirit, please comment, "Lord, deliver me from hell." Your declaration can be the first step toward a transformed life. The demon took me to a deep valley, to a specific place in that realm of torment. "Welcome to the valley of corrupted marriages," he said with morbid pleasure in his voice. "Here are those who have made something sacred profane." What I saw in that valley left me paralyzed with horror. The couples were chained together, not by love, but by chains forged by the sins they shared in life. Each current seemed to have a name, a specific nature: adultery, betrayal, neglect, coldness, abuse, lying. The souls groaned under the weight of these chains, which seemed to grow heavier by the moment. "Look," said the demon, pointing to a middle-aged man writhing in agony. This was a respected pastor in his community. He preached about holiness while maintaining secret relationships with the women of his congregation. His wife knew but chose to remain silent to keep up appearances. The couple was bound by chains that seemed to sear their souls, and between them there was a distance that no matter how hard they tried, they could not overcome. Beside them, I saw an elegant woman who was probably very beautiful in life. She dedicated her life to vanity and materialism, the demon explained. She turned her marriage into a social facade. Her husband was only a financial provider. No spiritual partner ever mocked the idea of holiness in marriage and taught his daughters to do the same. The most disturbing thing was seeing people I recognized, a couple who attended the same church as me, always smiling at services. They were separated by an abyss of mutual recriminations. In life, they had seemed to be in a perfect marriage, but now they could see the truth. Years of unresolved resentments, secret infidelities, and a total absence of God in the privacy of their home. "They shouldn't be here," I murmured. "Horrified, but they should," the demon replied with satisfaction. "They mistook religiosity for a true relationship with God. They made vows at the altar but lived as if those promises were just empty words. Did you know that many of them called themselves Christians, walking through that terrible valley? 6 young couples who had treated marriage as a throwaway thing, something to be experienced and then abandoned when difficulties arose. I saw that they had used their spouses as a springboard toward personal ambitions and then discarded them. The worst part, the demon explained, is that they all had opportunities. They all received small warnings, voices of conscience they ignored, advice from friends they scorned, sermons they listened to but never applied. Now it's too late. A woman stretched her arms out toward me, her hands contorted in pleading. Please, she begged. If you come back, warn my daughter. Tell her not to make the same mistakes I did. Tell her that marriage is sacred in God's eyes. That's when I understood. I was there not just to see, but to carry a message of mercy for those who still had time to change. As I watched those tormented souls, a different voice emerged from my side, deeper, more authoritarian, carrying a calculated malice that made my soul shudder. It was an entity larger than the others, which the lesser demons seemed to fear and revere. Marriages are our most effective weapon, the voice said. Destroy the marriage and you destroy the family and society falls apart. It is a simple but devastatingly effective strategy. The entity showed me visions of how this strategy was implemented in the world of the living. I saw couples being subtly influenced through small, daily temptations. Little by little, husbands became attracted to pornography, which sowed seeds of dissatisfaction and unfair comparisons. Wives are led to invest their entire identity in social media, seeking validation outside of marriage. See how easy it is, it continued. The voice we started with small distractions, excessive work, an obsession with appearances, entertainment that trivializes infidelity and ridicules the idea of commitment. Then we suggested thoughts, you deserve more. Your spouse doesn't understand you. A little lie won't hurt. The entity showed me smartphones as portals of temptation, where seemingly innocent conversations with ex-boyfriends or co-workers turned into inappropriate emotional connections. I saw how pornography altered brain chemistry and distorted expectations about marital intimacy. But our greatest triumph, the voice declared with somber pride, was convincing humanity that marriage is only a social contract, not a spiritual covenant. When we remove God from the equation, commitment becomes optional, and vows become empty words. The scariest thing was realizing how people made pacts with evil without even realizing it, each time one spouse deliberately chose to hurt the other. Each time they prioritized selfish desires over the well-being of the family. Each time they refused to forgive, small pacts were sealed, small chains were forged. I saw a man who had made a more conscious pact. In his desperation to save his failing business, he had sought help from occult practices. The price he paid was not only his own soul but that of his family, because the evil he invited into his life infected his home, his marriage, and his children. Marriage must be sacred, the voice continued, an image of divine love, a safe haven, a spiritual stronghold. That's why we work tirelessly to corrupt it. And look how successful we've been. The world has turned what should be eternal into something disposable, what should be sacrificial into something selfish, what should be sacred into something ordinary. The voice drew closer, and I felt a chill that chilled my soul. The best part is that they don't realize it until it's too late, like these you see here. I looked again at the doomed couples. Their expressions of despair and belated regret were seared into my soul. Then I understood that every seemingly small decision had eternal consequences, and that marriage wasn't just a human institution, but a spiritual battlefield. If you believe your home and relationship need spiritual protection from these forces working to destroy what God has brought together, please comment. My home belongs to God. This isn't just a comment, it's a statement of faith and a line in the sand against the enemy's strategies I just witnessed. Time seemed to not exist in that place, but I was taken to a different area of the valley here. The souls seemed to be in an even more acute state of awareness about their condition. It wasn't just physical torment, but deep spiritual anguish, or the total and unshakable understanding of opportunities lost forever. This is the place of belated repentance, the demon explained. Here, memory is perfect every moment. That they could have chosen differently, each warning ignored, each opportunity for repentance wasted. Everything comes alive with crystalline and infinite clarity. A man approached the invisible barrier that separated that stretch. His eyes reflected a desperation that words cannot describe. "I had it all," he exclaimed, "a wife who loved me, children who admired me. I traded it all for moments of pleasure, adventures that seemed exciting but that I now see as traps. If only I could go back." His voice broke and he recounted the scenes of his life. A successful executive who used business trips as an excuse for betrayal. His wife, distrustful but always hoping he would change, your children watching and learning from your example. And finally, his sudden death from a heart attack with no time for true repentance. A woman was kneeling not far away. "I mocked the idea of sanctity in marriage," she lamented. "I treated my husband like a bank, not a partner. My obsession with status and appearances poisoned everything I touched. I taught my daughters to value the wrong things, and now I see them following the same path. If only I could warn them." Another couple was trapped in an endless cycle of mutual accusations. "You never heard me," he yelled. "You prioritized everything above me," he replied. It was clear that they had spent their earthly lives in the same destructive pattern, never seeking help, never allowing God to heal their relationship. Now they were doomed to relive this toxic dynamic for eternity. What impressed me most was an elderly pastor with a respectable appearance. "I preached about family but neglected mine," he confessed among his fellow believers. "I built a great church. I earned the respect of the community, but I lost my wife and children in the process. They were there needing me while I was busy doing God's work. What a bitter irony to discover that my first mission was to love them." The demons seemed to feed on this despair, growing stronger with every wail. I realized that the regret in that place brought neither relief nor redemption, it only intensified the suffering from the clear awareness of what was lost forever. A young woman approached me as if she somehow realized I didn't belong there. "If you come back," she pleaded, "tell them that small moments matter, small decisions, small kindnesses or cruelties, small loyalties or betrayals. Explain that marriage isn't just a piece of paper or a social convention, it's a spiritual bond with eternal consequences." She continued, her voice cracking. "Tell them not to wait until tomorrow to fix what's broken today. Not to waste their time with resentment and hurt. Let them realize there are real forces working against their relationships that they need to fight." Before I could respond, they pulled me away, but their words and the images of those desperate faces were seared into my soul, a testimony I knew I would have to share if I was ever given the chance to return. While visions of hell still, something extraordinary happened around me. A flash of light burst into the darkness, so intense that even the demons stepped back, covering their faces. It was no ordinary light, but a presence, an authority that shook the entire realm of darkness. The light rushed in like a wave, driving away the shadows. The demons screamed in protest, but were powerless before this manifestation. The larger entity that had once seemed so powerful now cowered like a cornered animal. In the midst of that light, I heard a voice unlike anything I had experienced before. It didn't threaten or accuse, but had absolute authority mixed with ineffable love. "It is not your time yet," the voice said. "You have been allowed to see these things, not for your damnation, but so that you can be a messenger. Go and tell us what you saw. Let those who still have time know." I felt myself being drawn toward the light. The spiritual chains that seemed to keep me in that place broke instantly. I looked back for the last time and saw the faces of those tormented souls, their eyes pleading as if each one of them wanted me to carry their private message, their belated repentance like a warning to the living. The return trip was swift, as if I were carried on the wings of that light. In an instant, I was back in my body in the hospital. The doctors were still working frantically, but their faces showed defeat. One of them looked at the wall clock, ready to declare the time of death. It was then that I felt the impact, as if I had fallen from a great height into my body. A sharp pain coursed through every inch of my being, and my lungs expanded in a desperate gasp for air. The heart monitors went off, and the medical team stepped back in shock. "Oh my God," one of the doctors exclaimed. "She's back." The confusion that followed was intense. Doctors and nurses were running around adjusting equipment, checking vital signs. I heard snatches of their conversations. "Dead for almost 7 minutes. Impossible. I've never seen nothing like it." I tried to talk about what I had seen, but a tube in my throat prevented me. A nurse approached, her eyes wide with amazement and something else. "Reverence, Dal. See, stay calm," she said softly. "It's a miracle you came back. Don't force it." In the days that followed, as my body recovered from the trauma, the memory of those visions remained sharp. It wasn't like a dream that fades when you wake up. Every detail was seared into my consciousness. The faces, the voices, the pleas of those who could no longer change their fate. The doctors couldn't explain my recovery. Lesiones que sufri de berian habicido fatals cuando finalmente pucantalza algunos de ellos lo que había experimentado las reacciones variaron desde el escepticismo cortés hasta la curiosidad genuina. Un médico me tomó de la mano y me dijo no sé lo que creo pero sé que no deberías estar vivo algo tradivulto y algo manchados os recuerdos tan vividos por una resentencia había regresido con un propósito un mensaje una advertencia y sabía que no podía quedarse calado si crees que hay milagros y propósitos divinos en nuestras vidas incluso en los momentos más difíciles. Por favor deja en los comentarios dios todavía es lo imposible su testimonio de fe puede ser justo lo que alguien necesita leer hoy cuando me dieron de alta del hospital 3 semanas después del accidente era una persona completamente diferente no solo físicamente. Las cicatrices while alegre codro eran recordatorios constantes del impacto sino principalmente en mi espíritu como puede uno seguir viviendo normalmente después de haber vislumbrado la eternidad. Mi familia notó el cambio de inmediato. Mi marido con quien la relación se había enfriado a lo largo de los años fue el primero en das cuenta tus ojos son diferentes. Comentó una noche me miras como si me estuviera resvendo por primera vez. Tenía razón.